Why hello there friends, it's Emma here, the Bookish Princess. If you're watching this video the day it goes up, then today is Holy Saturday, which means we're at the very end of Lent and Easter is right around the corner. So it seemed like a good time to tell you about one of my favorite authors. I've mentioned her so many times. Her characters are so warm, her settings are so vivid. The historical research she puts into her novels is also just so impressive. But one of the things that impresses me most about her writing is its spiritual depth. She writes about the trials and triumphs of faith in such a beautiful, deep, insightful way. I am, of course, talking about the one and only Elizabeth Goudge. I have pretty much every Goudge book I own stacked up, balanced precariously here. Today we're going to go through all of them and I'll give you some advice on where I would say you should start with Elizabeth Goudge. See, look at that. I did not even drop it. Was born in the United Kingdom in 1900. She passed away in 1984. Her books are all set in the United Kingdom at all different time periods, and she really does a great job of bringing different time periods to life. She did write both children's books and adult books. When I was gathering my books for today's video, I realized that I am missing two, and one of them is one of Elizabeth Goudge's more famous works. That is The Little White Horse. It's a beloved children's classic. Mostly in today's video, we're going to be focusing on Goudge's adult novels, but we'll be touching on her children's books a little bit. And if you are just looking to get started, looking to get a taste, the children's books are a great place to start. And I think A Little White Horse is so excellent. You really get the charm of Goudge, the beauty of her pastoral settings. You get the fantasy element, which I think is really strong in her children's works. Even The Little White Horse itself. Is it just a horse or is it a unicorn? The heroine is Maria Merriweather. Isn't that just such a great name? Her parents recently passed away, and so she is sent to live at her family's kind of ancestral home. And she never knew much about her family's history, but she really comes to life when she moves into Moonacre Manor, and she does learn all about her family's history and gets on some pretty exciting adventures. I really need to reread The Little White Horse at some point. My copy has somehow gone missing. It's been spirited away, so I need to find it and reread it. But if you watched my March reading blog, then you might have heard me talk about another children's book by Elizabeth Goudge. This is Smoky House. This is set along the Devon coast. These children live at an inn, and there seems to be some smuggling afoot. There's also definitely that sort of fantasy element and that touch of magic. The good people are important characters in this book. I enjoyed reading this so much. A lot of Elizabeth Goudge's children's books you can get through Girls Gone By. So another one that I bought but I haven't read yet is The Valley of Song. I also have two others here. I also have here Henrietta's House and Sister of the Angels. Just look at this cover. Is that not so sweet and charming? And actually, Girls Gone By is kind of neat because they put the older covers in the front of the book so you can see what previous editions looked like, which I just think is so cool. The Torminster books don't have quite as strong of a fantasy element as some of the other books. But I loved this one quote from Henrietta's House. "Don't you dare to disparage fairy tales. A fairy tale, dear sir, in relating miraculous happenings as though they were the normal events of every day, is a humble acknowledgement of the fact that this universe is a box packed full of mysteries, of which we understand absolutely nothing at all. Heaven alone knows what'll pop out of it next. A singing bird, the theory of evolution, gooseberry pie. You can wonder till you're blue in the face as to how the giraffe got his neck or the gooseberry puffed himself out, but you don't know. You can't know. Any theory you may evolve about a giraffe's neck, my dear sir, is a fairy tale." That theme is definitely throughout all of Goudge's works, that there is more to this world than meets the eye, and as much knowledge as we gain, as much as we can explain, the world around us, there's still an element of it that we can't explain. And you're really blinding yourself by imagining that you know all there is to be known. So Henrietta's House and Sister of the Angels brings me to another Goudge, which I think is an excellent one to start with. Then again, I'm very prejudiced because this is one of my absolute personal favorites of Goudge. It is A City of Bells. Interestingly, A City of Bells is more of an adult novel, but Sister of Angels and Henrietta's House, which are the two other books in the Torminster saga, they follow the exact same family, same cast of characters, but these focus on Henrietta, the little girl who we first meet in A City of Bells, but we do still get to see all of the other characters. I think A City of Bells is a great place to start because it has such a range of all the good things that you'll find in all of Elizabeth Goudge's other works, so you get like a really great taste of them. You have a cathedral city and you have a beautiful description of the past of that cathedral city. Torminster is actually based on the city of Wells in England. You also have a romance, you have a mystery, you have a bookshop, and a deep love of books, which as a bookish person, the bookshop in A City of Bells is just top tier. A bookseller is the link between mind and mind, the feeder of the hungry, very often the binder up of wounds. There he sits, your bookseller, surrounded by 1,000 minds, all done up neatly in cardboard cases. Beautiful minds, courageous minds, strong minds, wise minds, all sorts and conditions, and there come into him other minds, hungry for beauty, for knowledge, for truth, for love, and to the best of his ability he satisfies them all. Yes, it's a great vocation. So I'm going to have to be very restrained in reading you quotes because I love Elizabeth Goudge quotes. I feel like there are so many lines from her books that just live on and, you know, give me strength long after I've finished reading the book, long after I've put down the book. So I have tried to go through these and like pick out the lines that really, you know, kind of have stuck with me most. But then again, every time I reread one of her books, it feels like there's a new line that grabs me and stays with me. One of my favorite lines in A City of Bells comes at the very beginning. The plot of this book is that Jocelyn, who is a soldier, has been wounded and comes home and is kind of kicking around, doesn't know what he should do with himself, and so he goes to visit his grandfather in Torminster. And I love the advice his grandfather gives him. Our destiny is like a wind blowing. It carries us along. But now and again the wind seems to drop. We don't know what to do next. Then it may be that a blade of grass growing in the road beside us bends slightly. It is a tiny movement, slight as a whim, but enough to show us which way to take. Stay here and do nothing. Stay a year if you like. What does it matter? It's often necessary in life to do nothing, but so few people do it nicely. And as for peace, there's plenty of it in this house and in this town. In last month's reading vlog, I mentioned that I was planning to do a read-along on my Discord chat rooms of an Elizabeth Goudge novel in April because Elizabeth Goudge's birthday is at the end of April, and the one that we settle on is A City of Bells. So if you would like to read this with us, with the Bookish Kingdom on Discord, you can email me, emma@bookishprincess.com, and I'll send you a link to join, or you can send me a DM on Instagram and I will email you the invite link. But I'm very excited to reread this and discuss it with everybody. The nice thing about A City of Bells is I think you do get this beautiful insight, this beautiful advice from grandfather, the wonderful characters. All of them have so much spiritual depth, but it's not too heavy. And some of Elizabeth Goudge's works, I have to admit, can be a little on the heavy side. Not in a negative way, just like they're dense, you know, they're meaty. They're packed with good thoughts and good sense and good faith, and so getting through them takes a little bit longer because they give you so much to think about, and sometimes they deal with fairly heavy themes. We'll definitely be getting into all of those good heavier books. But the other book that I like to recommend, because I think it is somewhat lighter, like it's a good place to start before you dive into the deep end of Elizabeth Goudge, you might want a slightly lighter story that still gives you the depth that you'll find even more of later. So my second go-to recommendation is The Scent of Water. It is about Mary Lindsay, who is a very efficient workwoman in London, worked there all her life, but she unexpectedly inherits this little house out in rural England, like in this little village kind of in the middle of nowhere. She's only visited the house once as a child, but she has a very vivid memory of it, and so she kind of just gets swept along and ends up, you know, quitting her job, leaving her job, and going to the country, moving into this house and learning about the history of the house, learning about her cousin Mary, who she was actually named after, who she met as a child, but that was just the one time she saw her cousin. But luckily, because her cousin left behind some diaries and journals, she really gets to know her cousin. And Mary Lindsay, the new owner, also finds a lot of healing for herself, for scars that maybe she didn't even know weren't fully healed. She has a chance to kind of think about her past, and she has a chance to really be present present to her neighbors and get to know her neighbors. With Goudge's characters, you find kind of similar types in all of her books, but I feel like that's what great authors do. They like develop these character types and they kind of take them out in each new story and like give them a new twist, make them fresh, make them different, but also draw on all the work they put in before and all the thought they put in before. And Elizabeth Goudge just does that so masterfully. The characters you find in each of her books, they represent totally different points of view, but she paints each of those different points of views very convincingly. In most of her books, you do kind of travel with each character. There's a main character, but there isn't like one narrator who you stay with the whole time. You really go into the mind of each of the characters. I love how there's almost a sort of storyline, or maybe not storyline is too strong a word, but a sort of thread connecting all of the thoughts of all of the different characters, connecting the challenges they go through, especially related to their faith. The quote that sticks to me most from The Scent of Water is, here, I'll read the whole thing so you can get the context. He would have liked to have been in the first class, but that was beyond one's control. If one's intellectual equipment was not great, one's spiritual experience not deep, the result of doing one's best could only seem very lightweight in comparison with the effort involved. But perhaps that was not important. The mysterious power that commanded men appeared to him to ask of them only obedience and the maximum of effort, and to remain curiously indifferent as to results. It reminds me of that old adage, no good deed goes unpunished, because I think there are so many times in life when, you put in the effort, you really tried hard, and like, at least on the surface, you don't get much out of it. But in Elizabeth Goudge, there's this sense that that mysterious power demanding the maximum of effort can create something out of your giving that maybe you won't get to see in this life, but you'll get to see it in the next. The result of your striving might not be immediately apparent in like worldly terms, but God will see it. And those are the terms that last. Those are the terms that matter. One of the things I like about Elizabeth Goudge is that she combines this like sort of almost fluffy, fairy tale wonder, just joy at the sheer beauty of the world with these kind of hard-edged facts and hard-edged realities that it takes faith to swallow. And I think that's one reason why her works are so spiritually strong and spiritually deep, is that they recognize that faith is difficult. God made all of this beauty and light in the world, but the dark in the world, God knows that's there too. And in this life, we're really in darkness. We have to learn to find the light and find the meaning in darkness. We have to learn to have the faith to wait patiently and journey patiently through the darkness. That idea is dealt with really beautifully in this next book, The Dean's Watch. Why should we always want a light? He chose darkness for us, darkness of the womb and of the stable, darkness in the garden, darkness on the cross and in the grave. Why do I demand certainty? That is not faith. Why do I want to understand? How can I understand this great web of sin and ugliness and love and suffering and joy and life and death when I don't understand the little tangle of good and evil that is myself? I've enough to understand. I understand that he gave me light that I might turn to him, for without light I could not have seen to turn. I have seen creation in his light. He shared his light with me that I, turned, might share with him the darkness of his redemption. Why did I despair? What do I want? If it is him I want, he is here, not only love and light illuming all that he has made, but love and darkness dying for it. And she said, I will learn to pray. That is just one of the absolutely wise and wonderful characters in Dean's Watch. This, for me, is right up there with A City of Bells and The Scent of Water. Going through, looking for quotes to read out, there were just so many lines that I had underlined in Dean's Watch. In fact, maybe I'll cheat and read you a second one. The plot of Dean's Watch is about the Dean's Watch, the dean of the city, the dean of the cathedral. So this has another amazing cathedral city. I don't think we hear the name of the city, but it's actually based on Ely. I've been to Ely, inspired by Elizabeth Goudge. There are even more British sites on my list inspired by Goudge. I really want to go to Wells, but Ely was so magical. Anyway, the dean of the city is a somewhat remote man, somewhat austere. The people kind of respect him but fear him at the same time. He has this beautiful watch, and the local clockmaker, who is just kind of a little retiring, often fearful man, man. He takes care of the Dean's watch and all the clocks in the Dean's house, and they strike up a very unexpected friendship. But the Dean at one point says to Isaac, the clockmaker, "There is no giving without giving away, but joy is a homing pigeon." I think it's at a point in the story where Isaac has just given something away that he didn't want to lose. Sometimes you don't think about that side of giving. Like, obviously it's always good to give, but to give can also mean to lose for you. But I love that thought, that joy is a homing pigeon. If you're working to give away joy and beauty, those things will come back to you. So yes, the Dean's Watch is definitely one of my top recommends. So in the Dean's Watch and A City of Bells, and really to a certain extent The Scent of Water as well, it feels like there's nothing happening like in the world at large that kind of brings you into a specific time period. I mean, obviously, you know, with clocks being wound in the house, you know, there is a sense of what time period it is. But you don't really have historical events making an impact on the characters. But in many of Goudge's books, you absolutely do have historical events very much woven into the plot. One Goudge that I read recently was The Castle on the Hill. This is set during World War II, and you're really taken into the mindsets of what the characters are fearing, what they're dealing with. It's set in the summer of 1940 as the darkest days of the Second World War approach. Miss Brown, who has been feeling lost and cast out of the pattern of things, finds a job as a housekeeper at this beautiful old castle. The castle has a long and storied history, and it's kind of neat because it's like, here's another chapter of this storied history that the characters are living through right now. You again have the beautiful reflections on faith woven into it. There were no real victories except the victories of the spirit. Such a victory as that of Greece over Rome when the mind of the conqueror was in turn conquered by the culture of his slave, or as that of Socrates drinking the hemlock and Christ upon the cross. These were the victories that outlasted the centuries. All the others turned to dust and ashes. So yes, if you're looking for World War II or enjoy World War II, The Castle on the Hill could be a great place to start. If you like Oxford, then you should absolutely dive into Towers in the Mist, which I don't know where my copy is. Like The Little White Horse, my copy of Towers on the Mist just sort of evaporated into the mist. I need to find it. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of it in this is Hodder Books. A lot of these editions came out in 2017, and somehow they're already hard to find. Why is that? Hodder Books needs to re-release them. Obviously, more people want to read these than the number of books that were in their first run. And they are really lovely, and I like the way they look when they're lined up on the shelf. See, when these first came out, I thought to myself, well, I'll be restrained. Like, I already have a lot of ebooks of Elizabeth Goudge. I have my grandmother's copies. But then recently, especially having some more space for bookshelves now, I was like, no, I love Elizabeth Goudge so much, and I love having, you know, like a P.G. Wodehouse shelf or like a Jane Austen shelf. I want a Goudge shelf of physical Goudges. But I definitely should have bought these when they first came out because they're harder to find now. There is a newer edition with this style of cover of Towers in the Mist, but I have not been able to get a hold of it. Anyway, it's so good. It's set in Oxford, but in 16th century Oxford. So Queen Elizabeth comes to visit, like the colleges are still being founded. You do have some town and gown tensions. It's just an absolutely magical setting. So much history. Again, the warm characters. You have some gypsies. You have a very exciting mystery, as I remember. There's this description of the characters looking down onto Oxford from the top of the hill outside of town, and it's just so magical. I don't have my copy here, so I'm sure I marked it in my copy. You guys will have to go back and watch some of my old Elizabeth Goudge videos because I'm sure I've quoted that quote previously. We mentioned earlier, there is lighter Goudge and heavier Goudge. This is somewhat heavier Goudge, mainly because of the history. I feel like Elizabeth Goudge would put in a lot of research and like find all these amazing old stories that she could use in her books. And I think there was a part of her that just couldn't bear to leave any scrap of good story and good history out, because Probably there's a little too much history. Like, probably some of that could have been left out. But you know, I sympathize in my videos when I'm editing. Like, I like to, you know, vlog when I travel. And then when I get home, it's like, I don't want to leave out any of those clips. Even if they're a little blurry or like the audio's not great. If there's like something good in the clip, I'm just like, I don't want to leave it out. I feel the same way about The Child from the Sea. I have no idea what's up with this cover. It's just bizarre. We'll ignore the cover. But this is set in 17th century Wales, and it is about Lucy Walter, who some people say was the mistress of King Charles II, but there are also some who say that she was secretly his wife. Elizabeth Goudge says she was secretly his wife, and just like the agony that she has to go through is heartbreaking. That combined with the history, I think makes The Child from the Sea definitely one of the heavier. I mean, you can see it's literally one of the heavier of Goudge's books. But I have so many lines underlined in this, so many just beautifully captured moments and scenes and feelings. My uncle says that we are made new with every heartbeat, as the world with every spring. New birth, he says, is the rhythm of the world. I love that. And you definitely see that in all of Goudge's works, this sense of like renewal is possible. And like kind of in life, you go through these phases where you're in darkness, but then, you know, you are brought back to life. Here's another neat one from later in the book. No subject is safe when the mind has been refused some knowledge that must not be allowed entry. Created to search out knowledge, it hates to be denied. Elizabeth Goudge's characters definitely have to think things through to the bitter end, to the bitter last drop. I think The White Witch must be set at a fairly similar period. No, it's set right before. This is set during the English Civil War, so I guess that was more Charles I than Charles II. Then The White Witch is definitely an excellent one. It's not really like, ooh, witches and goblins. It's kind of getting at the core of good and evil in men's hearts. And also thinking about, you know, as we've been talking about, that sort of bigger world and bigger reality that we are a part of. The landscape of a place is always present in Elizabeth Goudge's works, and in The White Witch especially, we're dealing with, you know, not potions, but, you know, herbs and flowers and just a knowledge of all of everything that grows in the area. She grew her roses chiefly for medicinal purposes, but for their beauty too. They hedged her whole domain as well as the herb garden, and the cottage was named after them. She moved along the grass paths with reverence and awe. The rose was so immensely old. From the gardens of Damascus and Persia, the garden rose had come to the walled castle gardens of England, and to the poor plots of the peasants. And for how many centuries it had grown wild in the forests, who could say? Its incense breathed from old legends, and the dim ways of lost centuries were lit by its beauty. Cold never killed it, and storms did not tear it away from the stones where it clung. It mantled walls as though it loved them, and its flowers leaned in at cottage windows. My favorite part in that, though, is that its incense breathed from old legends, and the dim ways of lost centuries were lit by its beauty. There is always this sense in Elizabeth Goudge that, like, what's past is not really past. In some ways, it's present in the present, and past personalities are kind of woven into the present. But again, not in like a hokey, ooh, you know, kind of way, but in just a really beautiful, subtle way. You can see a lot of that actually in the middle window by Elizabeth Goudge. If any of these books have like ghosts, I feel like it's not fair to call them that, but the middle window has like an element of ghost story going to it. Judy Cameron abandons the busy world of London and whisks her parents and fiance away to remote Glen Sulog in the Highlands. The Scottish setting is so cool in this one. You know, it's been too long since I last read it. I have not broken in this new copy yet, so I need to break it in and underline some quotes. Okay, we are actually approaching the end here. How long is this video going to take me to edit? How long is it going to be after it's edited? Who can say? So one of the heftiest works of Elizabeth Goudge, and I think one of the ones she was most well known for during her lifetime, was Green Dolphin Country. It is also sometimes known as Green Dolphin Street. I'm not really sure why there were two names. This one, as you can guess, is a little bit of a slog. In fact, in The Joy of the Snow. So this is her autobiography that Goudge wrote herself. It's so cool to read about, you know, her growing up, because her father worked in cathedral cities. He worked in Oxford, he worked in Ely, in Wells, and so that's really how she got a lot of the inspiration for these beautiful settings for her other books. And I think she says that like Green Dolphin Country, Like, she knew it should have been shorter, but it just kind of ran away with her, and like she just had to get it done, and it kept getting longer and longer. But kind of like A Child from the Sea, I feel like it is worth the effort to get through. The characters definitely go through just agony and heartbreak. But as in all of Goudge's works, there's a sense that that agony and heartbreak, even though it feels like it's for nothing in this life, like it isn't really for nothing. That act of getting through those difficulties is really building up, you know, the kingdom of God. A lot of this book is set in New Zealand, which is really stunning, like really incredibly told. But a lot of it is also set on, I think she gives it a different name, but it is actually based on the island of Guernsey in, you know, the Channel Island off of England. Like the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society, except this is a couple centuries earlier. I think this is in the 1800s. So not a couple centuries earlier, just 1 century earlier. It's about 2 sisters and how their fates are kind of intertwined with young William Ozanne. The only reasonably priced copy of this that I could find online was a library copy. So this is the old Kent County Council library copy. I don't know why Kent Libraries and Archives would have gotten rid of their Elizabeth Goudge copy. I mean, I guess it was getting a little beat up, but it's in good enough condition for me, and I'm sure whenever I reread this, I myself will give it some more cracks in the spine. But yeah, sadly, I don't have my quotes, and I'm sure I had lots and lots of quotes from Green Dolphin Street. Again, if you want to hear them, maybe you can go back and check out those videos. I'm sure I talked about them as I was reading it. That was a couple years ago. Now, I only have 1 book left in my stack, but the Goudge aficionados out there, I can hear you saying, where are the Elliots of Damaroche? How are they not on this list yet? Well, I had to save something for the end, right? The Elliots of Damaroche are a trilogy of books. I actually read them out of order. I think I read the middle one first and then the last one, and then I went back and read the first one. So you can read them out of order. Some of the plot elements are going to be spoiled if you do that though, so probably better to read it in order. And you know, I think this could be a pretty good place to start with Goudge, especially like if you like trilogies and you know you want to follow the same family, the same household over the course of 3 books. So you have The Bird in the Tree, Pilgrim's Inn, and then The Heart of the Family. This is set after World War II, so the family has been affected by World War II, and you really get to know all of the different generations, the grandmother, the adult children, their children. Goudge's characters are definitely not perfect, and they do sin and they make mistakes. But she does such a great job of really getting down inside of them and like finding the glimmers of goodness, even in her sort of villains, as it were. There aren't really villains in some ways, because even the sort of darker of her characters, she digs down beneath all of their sin and vanity and gets at their soul, the goodness that is still there within them, kind of crying out for God, crying out to reform and to do better. I should reread that trilogy. I should also reread Gentian Hill. This was one of the earliest Goudge books I read. It's set during the Napoleonic Wars, so we do see some life at sea for young Anthony O'Connell. It's also set in the Devonshire countryside. I was just looking on my Kindle, and I think my mom must have reread this on Kindle and highlighted some quotes, so I'm cheating. This is one of my mom's quotes. No, he did not believe in capricious fortune, but in a carefully woven pattern where every tightly stretched warp thread of pain laid the foundation for a woof thread of joy. And then there are 2 other books, Goudge books, that I have not yet read, and I don't actually own yet. Island Magic is one of them. The Rosemary Tree is the other. So once I get to those, I'll have to like get back to you guys. Maybe one of those are also good places to start. I mean, really anywhere is a good place to start. Just kind of looking over the list and deciding what speaks to you. Do you love history? Do you love a certain period of history? If Goudge wrote a book in that period of history, then definitely go for that. I already mentioned her autobiography, The Joy of the Snow, which this is obviously not a place to start, but once you love Goudge and know Goudge, it's just such a delight to read. She also wrote, I believe, or collected rather, a number of anthologies. So this is a book of comfort. I do have the dust jacket somewhere. I can't remember where I put it, but it has a really beautiful, I don't know if you can see that, kind of embossed image on the cover. And this is just a collection of quotations from all sorts of different sources. The gospel, poems. They're all according to different themes. This book is themed on comfort. Comfort and Tribulation, Comfort of Faith. And I believe there are a couple other anthologies that I want to look into and grab. And then just one last book here, which I also have not yet read. Although since I've read The Joy of the Snow, I feel like I do kind of know quite a bit about the world of Elizabeth Goudge. This is written by Sylvia Gower. And so I think it is diving more deeply into the places Goudge lived. So I should read this before I go back to England so that I can put some places on my itinerary. All right, well, speaking of light and darkness, we're losing the light here. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's journey through Elizabeth Goudge. If you have read some of Elizabeth Goudge, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Have you read many of her novels? Is there one in particular that you think is good to start with? If you're interested in joining the read along, as I mentioned, make sure you send me a note so I can get you into the Discord group. We will be reading that in sections, and then like every Friday we'll be discussing a different section. So we're starting on April 16th, and then the last section of the book is May 7th. We'll be chatting. As I've mentioned many times before, Goudge is just way up there, one of my top 3 favorite authors. And I've mentioned her in many videos in the past, but I thought it would be fun, especially since I just recently splurged and got all these hotter books. I thought it would be fun to give you guys a tour of my Goudge collection, and hopefully Hotter Books or someone will re-release some Goudge, because it's not like impossible to get the used copies. There are plenty of them out there, but it would be nice if it was a little easier to get your Goudge. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. I post new videos every week. I hope you have a very happy and blessed Easter. I'll talk to you again soon, and as always, until then, I hope you have a magical and bookish day. Bye, guys.